Hi y'all, welcome back to my channel. In today's episode, we're going to review all current paths of Elesis. Speaking of Elesis, she's kind of the origin of the game. Without her, Elsword probably won't exist. Well, all of you know that Elboy is the main phase of this game. But did you know that Elsword was tend to be the sequel game of Grand Chase, where Elesis is the main character of the game. Back then, KOG decided to give up on GC and keep developing on Elsword instead. So they actually sacrificed Elesis for Elsword. By the way, they relaunched GC recently. It should be officially out next month. I'm looking forward to it. And before we start reviewing Elesis, make sure to subscribe my channel for new video update, a new patch update from global servers, and different engagement I post on community tab and on my Instagram page. Elesis reborn in Elsword not long after. And based on the lore, Elesis is a sister that Elsword has been looked up to since he was young. Indeed, it's a sweet reunion of the sibling. And now Elesis is officially the member of our Elsword party. Elesis' system is similar to Elsword. She can switch between Annihilation mode and Gale mode. You'll have more damage in red mode, and gain speed and mana buffs in blue mode. When using the corresponding skills, the gauge will gain either red or blue slots. So using the red skill in Annihilation mode will amplify the skill damage, and using the blue skills in Gale mode will reduce the MP cost and cooldowns. Nothing too fancy about it. But playing as Elesis and Elboy requires some amount of your muscle reflex, since micromanaging between modes and skills takes some practice to play it fluently. First path, Empire Sword. Yes is a path of Elesis delved into her saber side. She slayed through enemy by using sword auras and combos. It's a typical saber class in general MMORPG game. She is also a good buffer for parties. Straightforward saber class. Her clearing is very decent. Most of her skills have good range. You can clear 360 easily. Sword of Victory also makes her great damage pretty decent. Her skills damage is not the greatest within all Elesis. Well, except for Triple Sonic. But with the help with Sword of Victory and her third draw passive, her damage is quite solid for bossing in general. But she requires good positioning for dealing max damage. So dealing damage with smaller bosses may be off if compared to the other two paths. But due to the Gale mode of Elesis, all of them did okay on managing mana. For ES, she needs more hits from the skills to refund mana. Therefore, mob size became an important factor for it. ES has the best support ability in Elesis. Skills damage buff, critical, maximized, action speed, and additional damage buffs. And these buffs are based on the quantity of party members, which makes her a good support for raids. Her debuffs are amazing as well. Damage taken debuff, 2 defense debuff for both physical and magical damage, and the charge debuff will explode for damage when party member pops it, which makes her the best supporting class within all Elesis. So ES is good for new player in general. Straightforward gameplay with smooth skill kit that can hands off easily, welcoming support for all raids. But her mana management depends on mana refund, which makes her quite a mana hunger during raids. Her boss damage depends on the size of mobs. She is more of a team player instead of a solo DPS. She is like a general of an army, which fits the theme of Empire Sword perfectly. If you want to deal some damage together with some support abilities, ES is one of the good pick with no doubts. Second path, Flame Lord. FL is a path where Elesis specializes on her fire magic. She clears the stage by throwing fireball, flames, and making fireworks. The visual of her skills ethics is pretty satisfying to watch. You're basically hosting a light show for every dungeon you're in. Her clearing is the best within all Elises. She has homing skills and low CDL passive. She melts down enemy quickly with her flames. But she is not a easy to master type of class. Her bossing damage depends on micromanaging her self-buff and gear, which makes quite a difference for bossing if you didn't pilot her well. She has a lot of self-buffing. She will get 3 buff when awaking. Items like onions that helps her awaking became really important when managing self-buffs. She relies on these buffs if damaging. Since she doesn't have big damage on braveries, she depends on her low CDL with skill spamming. Her mana regen passive along with skill mode makes her mana consuming low. She relies on skill spamming for dealing constant damage. And the passive makes her mana usage very efficient. But when it comes to support, FL doesn't have much to offer. She can only lower magical defense for a low amount. I mean, that's better than nothing, but she is definitely not a support tier class. FL is great at clearing. Her skills have pretty good range. Also, homing skills makes clearing even faster, especially in early stages. She has low mana cost and low CDL for skill spamming. Her main damaging skills are blue skills, which makes her spamming even easier with her system and passives, and she can ignore some defense as well. But she's not an easy class to pilot. You have to use awakening items like Onion to maintain her self buffs. She is also quite gear dependent, which makes you feel her damage a bit off during mid to end game farming. Her support is not good either. Raid farming may be a potential issue for her as well, and also you need to build some fire resistance to empower your damage. I personally can't pilot her too well. If your cell buff didn't go on point, your attack will hit very soft, but thanks for the tips I got from the Elesis players, it makes me understand her mechanic more. She is indeed an underestimated class, and very fun to play with as well. Third path, Bloody Queen. Is it me, or Alice's path are getting harder and harder to pilot? When you think FL is not easy to master with, BQ just came along and said hi. She is not the typical saber class. To me, she is more like a berserker or vampire class. She uses her health to exchanging for big damage. She is the glass cannon path of Elesis. Playing as BQ is like dancing with the devil. You need to be prepared to see that empty HP bar quite often. I personally had a mini heart attack while playing as BQ, though her damage is really satisfying. But you need to hug your resurrection stone before you master her gameplay. Some of her skills are blood hit skills in this path. Well, it's pretty obvious that you can exchange health for more damage if using blood hit skills. Her clearing is not bad. She has several clearing skills, decent for most of the dungeons. It's pretty stable on clearing. Just the casting speed is not fast as the other two. Bossing is where BQ rules. Her damage is just next level, if compared to the other two Elises. Actually, she is one of the top damaging class in the game as well. Her damage is brutal. Her passive can buff herself at least extra 90%. And that's just the attack percentage part. With Berserker and Shade Illusion together, you gain more critical damage. Her main damaging skill, Bloody Storm, will become double of the damage when Shade Illusion buff is on. She actually has so much details in her passives. You're easily missed out if you don't read it carefully. And shout out to my friend Beans. He actually make a decent guide of BQ for you all to read. I'll post the link down below in the description. Check it out if you are struggling with her. It is really useful. For mana part, she's similar to ES. She doesn't really have strong mana passive, and she relies on Gale modes for mana refund as well. But her skill's damage has more hits, so she's not necessary to spend all of her skill for mana refund. That's why her mana management is slightly better than ES. For supporting, I think she's the first 0-star I ever rated for my character review video. She just doesn't have any good support abilities. KR even gonna change her healing from Bloodfall to damage reduction for next patch. Well, you may say she has element resist debuff. Are you really going to pick her instead of AOS or APS for that? So I will just give her 0 for supporting. Sorry. So BQs have tons of heavy damage from her blood hit skills and passive. She's a DPS monster in this meta. She's actually a pretty tanky class when you master her. Indeed, she's a very unique damaging class in this game. She became easier to play with after reaching 3rd job. She will obtain a rest passive from that, which makes her life easier when playing with blood hit skills. But she is not easy to master. Some of the mobs ignore iframe at endgame stages. Makes her difficult to survive when using blood hit skills. And similar to FL, she needs to micromanaging her self buff in order to deal the maximum damage. Her skill kit is lower than other Elises, which makes her speedrun a bit hard sometimes. And since you're always low on HP, you're often killed by random things like stage mechanic and stuff. And also lack of support ability will make your mid to end game farming hard, since you are not very party welcoming if you are not the DPS yourself. Playing as BQ is challenging. If you are looking for a challenging class with tons of damage as a reward, BQ is made for you. I personally don't know much about Elesis besides ES, but after I done researching for this video, I do think her gameplay is very interesting. Shout out to all of these Elise's main player. They helped me through my researching phase with their knowledge of Elise's. Big applause to them. Thank you. Which Elise's you have the most fun with? Do you know her from Elsword or Grand Chase? Let me know on the comment section. Subscribe to my channel so you won't miss out next update and folding sessions. Like and share if you enjoyed this video. I will see you all on next one.